Thank you, Jill, and good morning, everyone. The aspects of writing study has provided us with rich data, which we can use to explore a number of questions. One question which my colleague Lucy Chambers and I thought interesting to explore is whether students' writing has become more informal over time. One of the topics that feature quite prominently in conversations and discussions around formality and informality in students' writing is social media communication, which is often referred to as electronic communication. So what we decided to do was use our data from the aspects of writing study to carry out a small investigation looking at whether any of the changes that we observed in students' writing over time resembled the writing style typically employed in electronic communication. By doing that, we hope to explore further, understand further any stylistic shifts in students' writing, and also shed some light on the much debated relationship between electronic communication and students' writing. But let's start with electronic communication. Why did we become interested in it? We became interested in electronic communication mainly because of its increasing use among young people. Communicating, for instance, via SMS, emails, Facebook, Twitter, or WhatsApp has become a very common practice among young people. Specifically, according to Ofcom, 90% of 16 to 24-year-olds owned a smartphone in 2015. Also, it was found that the amount of time which internet users aged 16 and above spend online each week was 10 hours in 2005, increasing to over 20 hours in 2014. So it seems that the amount of time that young people spend online today has more or less doubled compared to 10 years ago. Based on this, it can be argued that the sociolinguistic landscape today is very different from the sociolinguistic landscape 10 years ago. The popularization of social media has led to the emergence of new styles, of new patterns of communication. And this has generated a lot of concern among the public around the effect which these new styles of communication could have on students' formal writing. This concern has often been expressed in the media through headlines such as the ones that you can see on the screen. Art of essay writing damaged by Twitter and Facebook, Cambridge Dawn warns. Facebook and Twitter harm pupils' literacy. Texting is fostering bad grammar and spelling, researchers claim. In light of these concerns and the rapidly changing sociolinguistic landscape, we thought it would be interesting to explore the relationship between electronic communication and students' writing. We attempted to do that in an indirect way because the data that we have from the aspects of writing study do not allow us to draw any direct links between electronic communication and students' writing. So we embarked on a study to identify potential overlaps between changes that happen in students' writing over time and the writing style normally used in informal electronic communication. So is there anything in common between the way that students' writing changed over time and the way that we normally write texts or informal emails? To answer this question, we focus specifically on our 2004 and 2014 cohorts. But before I share with you some of the observations emerging from the comparison we carried out between our 2004 and 2014 cohorts, let's have a look at electronic communication, at the characteristics of electronic communication. What does electronic communication look like? Probably the most salient characteristic of electronic communication is the so-called Textspeak. In general, by Textspeak, we refer to the use of abbreviations such as TXT for text, the use of logograms such as numerals and symbols, and the use of emoticons, that is the use of punctuation marks and letters combined to express emotions and attitudes. But let's have a look at some examples of electronic communication to see how exactly Textspeak manifests itself. Here you can see two examples from Twitter. And here's an example of an abbreviation where the word government has been abbreviated into GOVT. And here is the ampersand sign, which has been used in place of the conjunction and. And here's an example, an extract from a conversation carried out in WhatsApp Messenger, an increasingly popular instant messaging platform. There are various examples of Textspeak here, such as K used instead of OK, ASAP used instead of as soon as possible, the letter U used to denote, to indicate the pronoun you, props used for probably, and max used instead of maximum. The question that naturally emerges at this point is whether students have started using Textspeak in their formal writing as a result of using Textspeak extensively outside school. To answer this question, we revisited our data from 2004 and analyzed them in terms of Textspeak. Please note here that the findings that I'm about to present cannot be compared with the findings on Textspeak, which are reported in our 2005 publication, because the analysis that was carried out back then used the single sentence sample, whereas the analysis that we carried out this year was applied to the 100-word sample. Just as a parenthesis for clarification. So, what did we find when we compared our 2004 and 2014 cohorts in terms of Textspeak? When we analyzed our 2004 data, we identified overall 21 instances of Textspeak, and these were found in the text of 10 students. Whereas when we analyzed our data from 2014, we identified only 2 instances of Textspeak, and these were OMG for oh my god, and 10 times more with times written with the multiplication sign. So it seems that even though according to Ofcom in 2014, 16-year-olds spent twice as much time online compared to their counterparts in 2004-2005, this did not lead to an increase of Textspeak in their formal writing. So, what does this mean? Well, it means that it indicates that students have relatively well developed register awareness. So they're aware of the fact that Textspeak is not acceptable in the context of formal writing. And this is consistent with the findings of other studies which have shown that students don't tend to use Textspeak in their formal writing. It's worth noting here that despite the concerns often expressed in the media and society in general, the use of Textspeak has been found to have a beneficial effect on some aspects of students' writing development. Specifically, research has shown that the use of Textspeak is positively related to improvements in literacy skills, especially spelling. But is electronic communication just Textspeak? Can it be reduced to Textspeak? No, electronic communication is much more than Textspeak. Electronic communication constitutes a distinct type of written discourse. And what makes it distinct is the fact that even though it is written, it bears a strong resemblance to spoken discourse. In fact, it has been described as a hybrid register, as a blend of both spoken and written language conventions, as neither simply speech-like nor simply written-like, and as writing that very often reads as if it were being spoken, that is, as if the sender were writing, talking. To exemplify the distinct nature of electronic communication, here's an extract from a conversation carried out on Facebook. As you can see here, the meaning conveyed by the two messages, the two posts, is not communicated in conventional sentences. Two characteristics that stand out as unconventional is the limited use of stops and the non-capitalization of the beginning of the sentence. So here's an example of a missing stop. Probably have a few more people who would be interested to join. In that case, though, I had first thought to go home just to help my mom. As you can see, the person who posted this message wrote it as if you were saying it orally to someone. And here you can see 7 instances where the sentence starts with a small letter rather than a capital letter. So the question that we tried to investigate as part of this small study is whether these characteristics, which are quite common in informal electronic communication, that is the limited use of stops and the non-capitalization of the beginning of the sentence, resemble some of the changes that we identified in students' writing over time. The first feature we focused on was missed stops. And here's an example of a missing stop. We went down the path. One of my friends said she went down there before, but none of our friends saw her go down. As you can see here, the student writes as if he were speaking. He doesn't break his utterance down into conventional sentences. He writes in strings of language without using any full stops. We would expect, for instance, a full stop to appear after the path. So we went down the path, full stop, one of my friends said she went down there, etc. But the student did not use one. So, after identifying all instances of missed stop in both our 2004 and 2014 cohorts, we carried out a statistical comparison to find out whether our students from 2004 and 2014 performed similarly in this particular feature, missed stops. What did we find? As you can see in the graph, students in 2004 overall omitted more stops compared to their counterparts in 2004. And this difference was found to be statistically significant. Further analysis we carried out showed that the students contributing more to this difference were the lower attaining ones, which is an interesting finding on its own. Another feature of informal electronic communication which we examined as part of this investigation was capital letter omission, so the non-capitalization of the beginning of the sentence. And here you can see 2 examples of capital letter omission. As in the case of missed stops, we identified all instances of capital letter omission in both our 2004 and 2014 corpora and carried out a statistical comparison to examine whether the patterns relating to capital letter omission changed over time. So what did our analysis show? As you can see in the graph, students in 2014 omitted more capital letters overall compared to their counterparts in 2004. And this difference was again found to be statistically significant. As in the case of missed stops, the students contributing more to this difference were the lower attaining ones. Now, what do these findings suggest? To sum up, we found very limited presence of Textspeak in our 2014 corpus, but a stronger presence of missed stops and omitted capital letters compared to 2004. Interestingly, the features that seem to increase in 2014 are features which are quite common in informal electronic communication. So, is this a mere coincidence? Or should we take this as an indication, as evidence that electronic communication has influenced students' writing? I'm afraid that the methodological nature of the aspects of writing study does not allow us to answer this question. As my colleague Jill mentioned earlier, aspects of writing is by design an exploratory rather than an explanatory study. And as such, it can describe trends in students' writing, but it cannot really explain them. But regardless of whether this finding is a mere coincidence or evidence of the influence of electronic communication, the reality remains that some of the changes that we identified in students' writing over time resemble characteristics, features of informal electronic communication. And this in itself is a useful finding as it alerts us to the fact that there might be something there worth looking into. So it's useful in the sense that it provides directions for further research. We might not be able to say much about the influence of electronic communication on students' formal writing, but what we can say with more confidence based on the findings of this small investigation is that students' writing seems to be becoming more informal over time, especially among the lower attaining groups. And before I thank you for your attention, I'd like to mention that what I have shared with you today is only a taster of a bigger project which my colleagues and I are currently carrying out on the informalization of students' writing. As part of this project, we're looking at a number of features, including non-standard English and lexical variety, lexical diversity, which are not reported in the special issue of Research Matters which you've received in your packs. So if you're interested in this area, watch this space for more developments.